talking out loud because if I stop, I'll fall asleep. And I'm not sleeping tonight. I'm on till 4. The fire's burned down to embers, and the ring of light it makes is a small one, 8 paces across or so. And right along the edge of that ring, where the light has already finished and the dark hasn't quite started, there's been a man standing for the past hour and more. He doesn't come any closer. He doesn't call out to me, doesn't wave, doesn't do anything at all. He stands there and he waits for me to call him over myself. I won't. But if I go through it all in order, it'll be clear enough in a minute why I'm talking about it so calmly. There are 4 of us. The tent is 10 paces away, pitched with its back to the wind, and I left the door of it in plain sight. We came over the pass towards evening, came down in the dark as far as the first water, and stopped here, by the stream, in among the rocks. I'm on watch till 4, and then Senya takes over from me. I've no work to do at all, feed the fire and don't fall asleep. So I talk. As for somebody standing about here at night, I was told about that down below, at the ranger's post, where we got our firewood and our water. The woman who keeps the post said it in an ordinary sort of way, in passing, exactly the way she'd been talking about ticks and about the ford a minute before. Somebody stands with me sometimes at night, she said. And on nights like that, she said, I talk without stopping. About the weather, about the firewood, about where we're going tomorrow, about anything at all except one word. I asked her which word. She said, I don't say it out loud. It's the most ordinary word there is, a homely one, the one you use from your own doorstep to call somebody in. And that was all. After that, she went on to explain how to get round the cliff where the path runs out, along the rocks, and it never came up again. I had a laugh about it at the time. Politely, not out loud. The woman had given us firewood. It wouldn't have been right. And now I'm sitting here thinking that she was the only person all day who wasn't smiling when she said it. I can't make him out properly, and to be honest, I'm not trying all that hard. He's where the light isn't light anymore, only gray. An ordinary height, a man's height, arms down by his sides. No face. The fire simply doesn't reach that far. I put 2 logs on, not for the warmth, but to have a look. The flame came up, the ring widened by about 5 paces, and he didn't end up inside it. He ended up on the new edge, right on the line, exactly as he'd been. He didn't step back, I'd have seen it. I hadn't taken my eyes off him that whole time. The edge just moved, and he was already there. So then I shouted at him. Once, short, the way you shout at a strange dog at a gate. And the shout didn't go anywhere. At night in the mountains, a word goes off downhill, into the gully, into the wind. But my shout stayed with me. It didn't come back off anything. There's no echo here, and there couldn't be. It simply didn't go anywhere, as though I'd shouted in a room. My voice had suddenly got walls, and I'm the one saying that. Nobody put the idea in my head. All right, I'll talk in long sentences then. It isn't even a rule, more of a habit, and I've known it about myself for years. A long sentence is easier to keep going, and it's harder to fall out of one into a short word. Short words come out of me by themselves when I'm tired, and those are exactly the ones I'm not saying tonight. Not one of the ones people usually call to somebody from a distance to bring them nearer. Not that homely one from the doorstep either. So I sit here and I tell him about tomorrow's descent, about the water in the stream smelling of stone and not of weed, about the porridge catching on the bottom, and Senya being sure to say so in the morning. I say to myself, he isn't doing anything though. And then I answer myself back, he doesn't have to do anything. Waiting is all the work he's got. Standing is something he knows how to do. He has plenty of time, and there's nowhere for him to be hurrying to. The night is long. I'm on my own. and I've had an hour and more of getting used to him already. That, I think, is the only thing that really worries me. Not him, how quickly I stopped being frightened of him. Senya talks in his sleep. Not raving, actually talking. At length, with pauses, as though he's answering somebody like a man of the house. And in the morning, he remembers none of it. In the daytime, everybody laughs about it, and I laugh loudest of the lot. I've shifted round to sit closer to the tent. I'm sitting so that my hand can reach his shoulder through the tent wall, and I can hear that the room has got smaller. It was a house before, now it's the porch. I can tell by my own voice. I'm speaking in exactly the same way, but the sound is settling closer in, as though the ceiling had come down onto the top of my head. The wind is going over the top of us, over the rocks, making the noise it's supposed to make, and my words aren't getting into that noise at all. They stay here, with me, in something narrow. Something rustled in the tent. Senya turned over, breathed out, and started talking. Indistinctly at first, something about a rucksack and a strap. Then, more clearly, in that man-of-the-house tone people have when they stand in a doorway and settle somebody's fate with a single word. And I understood that he was asking somebody in somewhere. I didn't wait to find out how it would end. I put my hand on his shoulder through the fabric and held it there. He breathed out, turned onto his side, and went quiet. I sat with my hand on his shoulder for about a minute, I should think, and the whole time I was listening not to him, but to myself, whether I'd said anything while I was holding him. I hadn't. I hadn't said a thing, and I made a bad job of it, with a sour taste in my mouth and my throat clamped tight. But I said nothing, and then I leaned down to his ear and whispered to him to go on sleeping, and the whisper came out too loud for this place. Not an echo, I mean the sighs, as though I'm not whispering under an open sky on a mountain pass, where the nearest wall is 50 kilometers away, but in a cupboard, where the walls are an elbow away, and any word comes straight back into your face, because there's nowhere for it to go. Although really, I'm being unfair to him. He stands there quietly. All night he hasn't come a step nearer, hasn't made a sound, hasn't put out a hand, hasn't shown me any of the things people show you when they want to frighten you. He's behaved better than a lot of company I've had, and certainly better than Senya, who snores hard enough to bring the rocks down. He must be cold out there as well, I should think, standing all night in the wind, right on the edge, and asking for nothing. That's rare patience when you think about it. I don't believe he's unkind. He's simply built so that he can't do anything for himself. All he has is my agreement, and my agreement is the one thing I haven't given him. Not in a word, not in any other way either. And he doesn't seem to hold it against me. He hasn't hurried me along, and he could have. The sky over the far side of the pass isn't black anymore. It's watered down, gray along the bottom of it. It'll start getting light soon. The rain from the fire will stop meaning anything at all. The edge will smear itself out across the whole slope, and he won't be there. It's easier being on watch with him, if I'm honest, than being on your own. On your own, I start talking to myself in earnest by about 3, answering myself and taking offense at my own answers. This way, I've had a listener all night who doesn't interrupt, doesn't argue, and doesn't go anywhere. Good company all in all. Quiet, patient, in no hurry about anything. I'll wake Senya up in a minute, hand him the pot, and lie down. And I'll sleep right through to the sun, and I won't dream of anything, because after this, it isn't my watch. And the day after tomorrow, we've got a night by the lake. There'll be a fire there too, and there'll be an edge there too. I'll tell him about the weather a bit longer. He doesn't mind. Friends, I'll sit down in a minute. I promise. It's just that when the club turns 20 and you're the wrong side of 50, the toast comes out long. Bear with me. I wanted to say something about the club, and I will, but first about one trip that we have never talked about at this table. 20 years we haven't talked about it. And tonight I've stood up with a glass in my hand and I'm talking about it. And the four who were there have already worked out what's coming and put their forks down. Sit where you are, lads. I'll do it myself. It was one of those walkers' camps, out of season. October, when the summer has moved out and the winter hasn't got itself together yet. The water in the river black and quiet, the leaves wet, and the smoke off the fire not going up, but lying along the ground and drifting away into the bushes. The camp was a small one. 4 little cabins, a kitchen with a long table, and a stove that would light if you spent long enough coaxing it. And the main thing about that camp, there's always somebody there you don't know. They come up off the river, they come in off the path, they warm themselves, they stay the night, they move on. Asking who you are and where you've come from isn't done there. Anybody who wants you to know will tell you. There were 5 of us. We got the pot on, lit a fire around the back of the kitchen, sat down on the logs, and the evening went the way every first evening goes. Long, comfortable, and about nothing at all. He sat down with us once the porridge had already been eaten. He came round from the kitchen side, where there was a bulb burning over the door, said good evening, and sat down on the free end of a log. A man like any other man, an ordinary jacket, wet boots, hands out to the fire, the way everybody holds their hands out. And here's the simplest thing in the whole story. Nobody was surprised. There was nothing there to be surprised at. I took it that Vitka had asked him over. Vitka called everybody over to the fire. That was his way. Vitka, as he told me afterwards, took it that he was one of Lena's lot. Lena took it that he was just from the camp, out of one of the other cabins. Talik didn't take it as anything. He was scouring the pot. And that was what the whole thing rested on. Not on fear, on the question not being needed. That evening, Vitka told his joke about the geologist and the helicopter. He'd been telling it for 10 years. Everybody knew the words off by heart. And we laughed anyway, loudly, with a slap on the knee, the way you laugh at something of your own. The guest laughed as well, under his breath, and put a branch on the fire. We turned in late. Where he went off to sleep, I didn't see. In the morning, he was in the kitchen before anybody else, heating water. He turned out to be an easy man to have about. He brought firewood. He didn't push himself into the conversation, and if he did come into it, it was short and to the point. He answered you in a way that gave you an answer with nothing left inside it. Where from? Oh, off the river. How long for? However it goes. Out of season, everybody answers like that if they'd rather not explain themselves. By dinner time on the second day, I caught myself not knowing his name, and I didn't ask. We'd already had breakfast together, carried firewood together, I'd borrowed salt off him, and by then it was too late to ask him what his name was. It would have been awkward for me, not for him. That's how this thing works, lads. It doesn't forbid you anything. It simply makes the question more expensive every day, and you keep choosing to pay tomorrow. On the evening of the second day, Lena was cooking and suddenly said, apologetically, in the most ordinary voice, "Lads, I've forgotten the salt." There was salt, as it happens. I'd borrowed some off him that morning, and at that bit of nothing we laughed. And we laughed longer than a bit of nothing like that is worth. Marina put her bowl down, Vitka doubled over, Lena flapped a hand and sat down. The guest laughed along with everybody, looking into the fire. On the third day, the weather turned, and we sat in the kitchen by the stove. I remember that evening well, because that was where I nearly asked. The talk was about the river. The guest said something about the shallows below the camp. And Marina turned to me and mouthed it at me so that he wouldn't see. Who's he with? I gave her the shrug. No idea. She nodded, and we went back into the conversation. Do you see? By then we both knew that neither of us knew. And we still said nothing, because he was sitting 2 meters away warming his hands, and to say in front of him, "And who exactly are you?" would have been plain rude. Rude to a man who'd been fetching us firewood for 3 days. That night, in the cabin, Vitka said into the dark, "I'll ask him tomorrow." Talik said, "Ask him then." And we went to sleep on that, and it was almost pleasant having the question booked in for the morning. And the next day, over tea, Talik stretched and asked somebody to pass him his mug. Just a mug. And we laughed, short, quietly, and all of us at once, as though somebody had switched us on. The laugh finished just as evenly. Vitka never did ask him anything, and that seemed perfectly normal to me. The evening of the 4th day was the last one, and a very good one. Warm, no wind, the fire standing up in a straight column. We sat there, nobody saying anything, and it was quiet for a couple of minutes. And in that quiet, the wood cracked in the fire, and we laughed, all 5 of us and him, quietly, evenly, without a word, each of us looking into his own bit of the fire. And we stopped just as evenly. I remember that clearly, because I remember how good I felt. In the morning, we were packing up. Talik went down to the water to wash the pot, stepped on a wet stone, and his leg went out from under him. He fell badly, opened his knee right up. The trouser leg went dark straight away, and he sat there on the stones holding his leg with his hand. And we laughed. Quietly, evenly, all of us. And so did he. He sat there gripping his knee, the blood coming through his fingers, and he laughed along with us. Not loudly, quite calmly, the way you laugh at something you've known for years. Then Lena got the bandage out. We strapped him up. He got to his feet, and we went for our rucksacks. The guest wasn't there in the morning. Nobody saw him go, and nobody went looking. Out of season, that's how people leave. And on the coach, out on the main road, Marina said it into the window without turning round. "Listen, that one who was with us, who actually invited him?" And I said, "Vitka." And Vitka said, "No." And it went no further than that. Lena looked out of the window. Talik held his leg up off the floor. I wanted to say the simple thing out loud, that we'd spent 4 days living beside a man nobody had brought, eaten out of the same pot as him, and never asked his name. But while I was picking my words, the coach came out onto the tarmac. It got noisy, and the moment went. We never agreed to keep quiet. Nobody said, "Let's not talk about it." We just got off at the stop, sorted out our rucksacks, said our goodbyes, and from that day on, it never came up at the table. 20 years. We've seen each other hundreds of times in this very room, and the subject went round us the way you go round a wet stone you once fell on. Why tonight? Because the club is 20 years old, and there are people sitting in this room who are younger than this story. And because at the end of October, they're going to that same camp, to those same 4 cabins, and somebody will sit down at their fire again and say good evening and hold his hands out to the flames. I'll ask you for one thing. Ask him in the first hour. After that, it gets awkward. After that, it gets very awkward, and he'll still be fetching your firewood. And on that, I'll sit down. To the club. To 20 years. To the river. To October and to the stove you have to coax. And may you always have enough bad manners to ask straight away. Drink up, lads. Vitka, pour Marina a glass. Sleep, don't get up. I worked it all out while it was still light. We've got about 5 hours of firewood, and there's 7 hours of dark ahead of us, and this whole night is going to be about nothing but the difference between those two numbers. You're meant to put a fire out before you sleep. You told me that yourself on the first evening, and tonight we aren't going to put it out. And in the morning, if you want, you can tell me off with a clear head, and I'll agree with you in advance. Lie still. I'll keep watch. Listen to how quiet it is here. It isn't an empty quiet. It's a thick one, like the cotton wool they put in your ears. The river behind us goes on evenly, and because of that, it seems as though somebody a very long way off is repeating the same word over and over and can't get to the end of it. I've put 2 on. They'll catch in about 5 minutes. Until they catch, it'll be a bit cooler. Don't let that frighten you. It's always like that. You were laughing in the daytime, asking why I kept hauling deadwood back when the camp was already up and we had everything we needed. This is why. In daylight, it's awkward explaining things like this. In daylight, they sound like the talk of a man who simply hasn't had enough sleep. A man taught me. I used to come out here with him when I was a boy. He didn't say much and he didn't have many rules, but this was the one he kept repeating. While it's burning, they leave you alone. Not because they're afraid of fire. He was particular about that. Fire doesn't frighten anybody, and fire doesn't call anybody. Fire is only a sign that a man is where he ought to be, that he's awake and hasn't walked off and left what's his. Something like a raised hand. While the hand is up, the conversation is put off. Sleep. I'll talk more quietly. You just listen. You don't have to make the words out. I'll tell you one thing. Only don't open your eyes. I'm sitting with my right side to the fire and my left to the woods, to the dark, where there's nothing at all. And my left cheek is warmer than my right. It wasn't just now that I noticed it. It was before you lay down. At first I thought, it's coming off the water. The fire's heating unevenly. The rock behind me is giving back the day. I even moved. I honestly moved and turned my other side to the fire. And it all changed round with me, obediently, like a shadow. So it isn't the water, and it isn't the rock, and it isn't the fire either. I checked it as well as I know how. You're breathing evenly. That's good. Sleep. I've pulled another couple over to me, so I won't have to reach for them later. The bark comes away easily, so they're dry, so they'll give heat and not smoke. That matters. The smoke here lies low and stands between the trees in bands, and afterwards you can see anything you like in those bands, and there's no call for seeing things tonight. The fire's low now. It's given us embers, and that's nothing to worry about. Embers hold longer than flame. They only give less light. I don't need the light. I know everything here by touch. Rucksacks at my feet, the pot turned upside down, the wood pile on my left, and I stacked it so I could take from it without looking. He used to say as well that you mustn't get up from your place and go and look at who's out there. Not because there's anything terrible out there, only that while you're by your own fire, both sides are keeping to it. And if you go out, then it turns out that you were the one who broke it first, and you're the one who'll answer for it. So I don't go out, I sit. In the daytime, this is the most ordinary place there is. You saw it yourself. We walked it there and back. You put the tent up and felt nothing at all, and quite right too. In the daytime, there's nothing here to feel. Berries, midges, elk tracks down by the water, warm stones. I collected the dead wood quite calmly, like some fussy old fool, and I felt ridiculous doing it. And you wore yourself out today. I saw the way you went up that last climb on stubbornness alone. So lie down and don't argue. Watches are supposed to be taken in turn. I remember that. And tomorrow you'll take over from me, and tomorrow it'll be done properly. Tonight, let it be this way. My shoulder. Now it's my shoulder as well. The side that's turned to the dark is warm, as though somebody had set a well-heated stove nearby and was holding it 2 paces off. And the side that's turned to the fire is ordinary, warmed a little, the way a man beside a small fire ought to be. And the warmth coming from over there is even without any gust in it. Wind can't do that. Wind breathes, blows, lets go. This just stands. Don't wake up. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking out loud to myself. It's getting colder. It always gets colder towards the middle of the night. The ground gives back what it took in during the day, and after that, it's got nothing left to give. And the last hour before the light is the rawest one of the lot. I've put more on. The thin ones went quickly. What's left is the thicker ones. They catch lazily and smoke for a long time. 6 of them. I won't count out loud anymore. Counting makes you start hurrying, and there's nowhere to hurry to here. I used to sit facing the fire, the way everybody sits, with the dark behind me, and that was right. That's how it should be. And now my back, the one turned to the woods, is warm all the way, the whole of it, from my neck down to my belt, and I've caught myself putting it out there on purpose. The way you put your back to a stove when you come in out of the frost and stand there until it lets go of you. That's what I wanted to tell you before I forget it. Not that there's somebody out there, that it feels good to me over that way. He never said you mustn't, by the way. He said it isn't done. It isn't done to go for water without a light. It isn't done to leave a fire in the middle of the night. It isn't done to call out first. As a boy, I took all that for an old man's fussing, and it was a short set of instructions that he didn't want to spell out, so that he wouldn't have to spell it out for himself either. I asked him what happens when the firewood runs out before the night does. He thought about it and said, "It's always lasted till morning." At the time, it seemed to me that was an answer. Don't be frightened in advance. If I wake you, it means we have to go, and we'll go down to the river. It's open there, and it gets light earlier. And if I don't wake you, it means everything is all right, and you can sleep till the sun. I'll wake you if anything happens. You hear me? I'll wake you. I've moved your boots closer, just here, by your foot, so you won't be hunting for them in the dark. And go back to sleep now. I'm sitting with my back to the fire already. I didn't notice when I turned round, but that's exactly how I'm sitting. Facing the dark, facing the trees, with the fire behind me shining on the back of my head and hardly warming me at all. And I'm warm. My whole body is warm, evenly, from the wood side, and it's more comfortable than it was, and I can't explain it. The embers are even, red, quiet. They'll stand a good while yet. They always stand longer than you think. And they're good to look at when you don't want to think anymore. And your eyes stop by themselves. And you stop counting how much is still lying in the woodpile, because the counting only makes it worse. And the warmth keeps coming and coming, and there's more of it than there ought to be. And it's the kind of warmth you get in a house that's been heated a long time, where in the evening everybody is already sitting down and nobody is going anywhere. And you come in out of the cold, and the first thing you feel is the way it takes you by the face, the whole of it. And you stand there in the doorway, and you don't want to talk. I ought to put some on. There's still some left. I'll do it in a moment. I'll just sit out this minute and then put some on, while the embers are alive. Because if the embers... Let me top you up, if I may. Yours has gone quite cold. I kept meaning to say this, and for some reason I'd got it into my head that you'd be the one asking, and I'd only have to answer. And you're not asking. All right, then I'll go through it in order, and stop me if I start saying more than you want. We were coming down after dark, and that's my mistake. I'll name it straight away so I don't have to come back to it later. We got to the top late, and we started down when the light was already going out from under our feet. First, you stop making out the stones, then the path, then your own boots. Grisha went in front and talked steadily about nothing at all, not for my sake, but so that I could hear where he was. There was no level ground on that slope for an hour and a half. Then there was. A ledge about 3 meters by 2, scree on one side of it and juniper on the other. We put the tent up on the first flat patch there was, because we had nothing left to look for a second one with. It was as cramped in there as it always is with 2 of you in a 2-man tent, the other man's elbow under your ribs all night, and you can't move anyway because you'd wake him. No, I know what you've just thought. I'll tell you about the jacket, that's what I'm leading up to. On the first morning of that trip, I woke up because I was warm. The sleeping bag was drawn right up to my throat, and on top of me lay my jacket, the one left out the evening before on a rock 20 paces from the tent, and the hood was spread out under my cheek the way you spread it when you've lifted somebody's head with the flat of your hand. I'd put it out there to dry. I decided I must have got up myself, half asleep, and I lay back down. The second morning went the same way. The sleeping bag up to my throat, the jacket on top, the hood tucked under, and all of it done neatly, without any hurry. I said thank you to Grisha over breakfast. He looked at me, shrugged, and said, "Don't mention it." And I still don't know what he meant by it. On the third morning, the jacket was wet with dew on the outside and dry and warm on the inside, as though it had been put over me a long while before the cold ever came. I stopped asking. It was a nice thing. It's still a nice thing to remember, even now, and I don't know what to do about that. Now, that night, I lay down and I fell asleep. No, not like that. It wasn't me that fell asleep. The body went first. It's simple enough to describe if you don't rush it. First your legs stop answering, then your arms, then the breathing turns into somebody else's. It goes along on its own, deep and steady, and you're not the one driving it. And you stay. You're all still there, in your right mind, looking up at the ridge of the tent, because your eyes are where they were, and there's nobody left to turn them. I didn't sleep for a minute. I know how that sounds. The first thing I understood was that I couldn't close my eyes. That turned out to be worse than not being able to get up. The second was that I wasn't frightened. I was very quiet somehow, as though I'd been moved a step back from myself and left there to watch. And the night goes on all the while, and you can see it, even lying down. A pale patch of moonlight crawled across the slope of the tent, narrow, about the width of a hand. When I lay down, it was by the left seam, and it went across to the right one all night, slower than grass grows. On the inside wall, there were drops from our breathing at first, and then the drops stopped being drops and turned into frost, and the frost came down from the top towards my shoulder. Below us, under the ledge, the stream was running, and by morning it was running quieter. The water was getting caught higher up among the stones. The wind came in long rolls, and between the rolls, I could hear Grisha breathing beside me. Then he sat up. I heard his mat creak, and him feeling about for his boots and putting them on, and the zip of the door going down. 2/3 of the way. He always opened it 2/3 of the way, and him going out and crouching down outside to do it up again, so that I wouldn't be in the draft. I wanted to call after him. It seemed to me that I was calling. There was a voice inside me, an ordinary one, mine, and it said, "Where are you off to?" And it didn't come out at all, in any way. Not a sound, not a breath of air, not a movement of my lips. After that, it was simply time passing. The patch of moonlight got halfway across the slope of the tent. The frost reached the seam by my shoulder. The stream went quieter. The wind rolled through a few more times, I didn't count them, and then it stopped altogether, the way it always stops before the light comes. The slope of the tent went from black to gray, and the stitching of the seam came into view. Somewhere out there, one bird started up, briefly, the way you try out your voice. I saw all of it, and I heard all of it, and I couldn't. The body didn't come back all at once. First, I could blink, then I could take a breath of my own. Then the arm I hadn't shifted all night started to ache. And now about the morning. I was lying there with the bag drawn right up to my throat, and on top of me lay my jacket, the one left out the evening before on a rock 20 paces from the tent, and the hood was spread out under my cheek, the way you spread it when you've lifted somebody's head with the flat of your hand. I was warm. I remember that very well. I was warm and I was comfortable. And then I pushed the door open, and Grisha was crouching by the stove, waiting for the water to boil, and he said to me, "Good morning." No, wait. I wasn't delirious, and I wasn't asleep. I didn't make a single sound the whole night, and I'll answer for that. Though here's what I honestly don't know. What my body was doing on the nights I don't remember. It breathed. It turned over, I expect. It didn't go out of the tent. I'll answer for that. But beyond that, there's nothing at all I can tell you about it. We packed up and walked another day. And it was an ordinary day. And Grisha was ordinary. And the last morning was an ordinary one too. I woke up with the bag drawn up to my throat, under the jacket, with the hood spread out under my cheek. And he was already out of the tent. He'd gone on ahead down the path, and I could see his back below me, at the bend, 300 meters down. And this is where I want to ask you to forgive me, because what comes after is simple. It was daylight, about 3 in the afternoon. I was standing, I was walking. I could speak and I could shout, and I did shout. I could see him. He was 200 paces ahead of me on an open slope. There's nowhere to hide there at all. And down at the bottom, he wasn't there. And he wasn't there the second day either, or after that. For 11 years, I've kept that night in my head. The way I thought about it was, I heard him go out, and I didn't call after him. So I let him go. I lived with that, and it was steady, like toothache. And if I'm being completely honest, I even got used to it. And now I've said it out loud to you, and heard it myself. That night I didn't sleep for a minute, and I didn't move a finger. There was no way I could have fetched it for myself, and in the morning it was lying on me, and who brought it, I still don't know. That night wasn't the night at all, and I lay there for nothing. And I lost him a day later, on my own 2 feet, in daylight, in my right mind. And there was nothing I could do, and there would have been nothing I could do. And I don't suppose anybody could have done anything. It hasn't made things any easier for me. It turned out it was never about my not being able to get up. Do finish it, though. He used to do the same thing. Pour it out and then forget about it. He used to cover me up like that as well. All through my childhood. He'd come in, draw the blanket up to my throat, and go out again. There, you said that, not me. Thank you. I'll put another one on. Yours has gone quite cold. No, you sit. It's warm in here. Hello. You don't know me, and I don't know you. And most likely, the two of us will never meet. But you're standing at the cairn at the fork right now. You've taken the top stones off and pulled the tin out from under the flat one, which means you're going to the ranger station, which means you're headed the same way I was. So read this, please. It won't take long. I'm not writing it to be remembered by, and not just for form's sake. I'm writing it for you. Because nobody left me a piece of paper like this, and I'm sorry about that. Not bitterly, quite calmly, but I am sorry. You'll have heard about the house already, I expect. It stands on an old cutting, the roof is sound, the stove draws well, and there's water in the stream 30 paces down the path. The door has no lock. There's nobody to lock it against. It's 2 days' walk to anywhere people live, and everyone who gets this far gets here tired. And there's a custom there, an old one, and a good one. When you go, you leave firewood by the stove and matches on the shelf for whoever comes after you. It isn't written on the door or on the wall. People simply do it. You'll come in wet, in the dark, and you won't have to go hunting for anything dry because somebody before you thought about you. It's a good thing, a favor done forward, into the dark, for a stranger. I once called it a rule in my own head, and I felt awkward about it. Nobody demands anything. Nobody has hung anything up on a nail. It's just that the house puts you up for the night, and in return, you leave it a little warmth for later. There were 4 of us who came at the end of September. It was a quiet evening, one of those when the forest makes no sound at all, and you can hear a pebble turning over in the stream. Inside it was the way it is in a house that the people passing through are fond of. The table scrubbed white, a candle end in a tin on the windowsill, a bench by the window with an old blanket thrown over it. Somebody had left a pencil mark of their height on the doorframe a long while back, and nobody had rubbed it off. The firewood was standing by the stove, and the matches were lying on the shelf. We took them and said thank you out loud to the empty room. That's how we do things, in a friendly sort of way. The first evening was the most ordinary evening there could be. We cooked up a pot of porridge with tinned meat, we ate, we sat about, we talked over the next day's walk, and we turned in early because we were tired. And in the morning, the pot was standing on the stove full, and it turned out that we had cooked our supper and forgotten to eat it, though all 4 of us remembered eating. We had a laugh about it, decided we'd cooked too much, and ate that breakfast with a very good appetite. When we went on, we brought in firewood, more than we'd burned, and we put matches and half a loaf of bread on the shelf. The bread was going spare. We didn't fancy carrying it any further, and leaving it seemed like the right thing. We came back 2 days later by the same path, and at the station, everything was as we'd left it. Our firewood, our matches. But the bread wasn't on the shelf. We weren't surprised. Anybody might have called in. Somebody had taken the bread and put nothing there in its place, and there's no harm in that. Maybe they needed it more. That night was colder than the first one, and we kept the stove going longer. And in the morning, over tea, I asked who had eaten the day before. Everybody nodded, and nobody said what. I didn't ask again. People in the forest eat as they walk, out of a pocket, without paying attention. I'm the same myself. But something about it was bothering me by then. And packing up to go on, we left more than before. Firewood the whole length of the wall, 2 boxes of matches, tea, sugar. And for some reason, I put my spare torch on top of it all. Just put it there. It seemed to me that half a loaf had been too little. And that's how it went on. We kept coming back to the station between our trips out, and by the time we arrived, what we had left had been taken. The firewood was standing the way we'd stacked it, but the things we'd left out, those went. And what we put out kept getting bigger. Not because anybody asked us to. Nobody asked. It was simply that, packing my rucksack, I'd suddenly realized that yesterday's hadn't been enough, and I'd add to it. The days went on, steady and good all the while. We walked a lot, we talked a lot, we slept soundly, the way you only sleep in the forest. Nobody was ill, nobody got properly tired, and everybody's mood stayed light and even. The kind, you know, when you're walking over the moss and you don't notice that you're smiling. Autumn had all faded out by then. In the mornings there was mist waist-high in the hollows. In the daytime you could hear the needles coming down off the larches, and towards night the stream got louder. It's always louder in the dark, you'll notice that yourself. And then, one evening, I was sitting by the stove looking at the fire, and I tried to remember when we had last eaten. And I couldn't. Not yesterday, and not the day before. I asked the others, and nobody could, and nobody had noticed. The four of us were sitting in a warm house, healthy, calm, not the least bit hungry, and the talk moved on to something else by itself, easily, without any effort at all. And that, really, is everything I know. What comes after this is my own guesswork, and you're free not to believe it. It seems to me that a night here is meant to be paid for by leaving something, and that's fair enough. The house gives you warmth, you give the house warmth, but how much, nobody says. Nothing here is said out loud at all. And whatever you've fallen short by doesn't go away. It waits. It carries over to the next night, and the night after that, and it grows, quietly, like a bill in a notebook that nobody shows you. The bread was enough that time. After that, the bread wasn't enough. The further it went, the more you had to put out for the night to be paid for in full. And I never did manage to guess it right. My three headed down at the beginning of November. I walked them as far as the cairn, as far as this very stone, and I think they got there. The path is an easy one, and the weather held good right up to the snow. And I stayed. Not because I'm being kept here. I'm not being kept. The door has no lock, and the path can be read even under snow. It's simply that there's something unpaid left against my name, and to carry that down to where people are would be a bad thing to do. To you as well, among others. I'm waiting to be asked for it. I've been waiting a long time now, and quite calmly. At first, I listened out for every step on the porch. Then I stopped listening out. Then I stopped counting the days as well. Nobody has asked me for it yet. Maybe nobody ever will. Maybe nobody asks here at all. And they simply keep the account and wait for a man to work it out for himself. So here's what I'm asking of you, and it's the only thing I'm asking. When you come to leave, leave a little more than you meant to. The house here is a kind one. The night is warm, and nobody will lay a finger on you. Just leave a bit over. More firewood than you burned, a whole box of matches, and something else besides that you won't miss, and that somebody in the dark will turn out to need. Then your night will have been paid for in full, and mine will stay against my name, and that's as it should be, because it's mine. If you see somebody at the station, it will most likely be me. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I might not do any talking, but there's nothing to be frightened of. I'm simply waiting, and waiting stopped being hard for me a long time ago. And now put the paper back in the tin and the stone on top of it the way it was, so that the next one gets it too. Good night. The stove will light quickly, and the wood by the wall is dry. Not asleep, Nada? Well, I'm not asleep either. Move up closer. It's warmer here. That's it. Pause to the embers. Only, don't go putting your nose in the ash. You're always putting it in. I'm talking to you because there's nobody else to talk to. The lads are asleep, and if I stay quiet, I start listening. And there's nothing here to listen to. Or rather, there is, but it's better not to. Do you remember how we came here, Naidushka? Of course you don't remember. The only thing you remember is whose pocket the sausage was in. We were walking the old route, the one nobody walks anymore. The path had grown over. The blazes on the trunks had sealed up with resin. And towards evening, we came out at a campsite. And at the campsite, everything was ready and waiting. The fire pit laid round with stones, clean, no old ash in it, as though it had been swept out. Beside it, the firewood, split, dry, lying under spruce branches so that it wouldn't get wet. I picked up a log, and I didn't see straight away why it made me uneasy. And then I saw. They were cut to the length of our pot. Not just short, exactly right to sit across our trivet without the ends poking out. Sashka kept trying them afterwards, taking them off and putting them back and saying, "Well, would you believe it?" The spruce branches were laid down lengthways, thick, with the fronds turned inwards, the way they're laid by people who know how to do it. And they weren't laid as one even carpet, but to size, one bed longer, one shorter, and the one on the end shorter still, for the shortest man. Vitka's our short one. He's had the short end of things all his life. He didn't even take offense. And the pegs. The pegs had been driven in beforehand, into the moss, for our tent, for its corners, for the spacing of its guy lines. I pitched it without shifting a single peg, and it stood there as though it had been taken down here rather than put up. We had a laugh about it, of course. We said, "Lucky us. Good people camped here before us, thanks to them." You went round the site, sniffed everything in a circle, and lay down by the fire. You didn't bark, Nada. Not once that whole week. All right, that's not what I'm on about. In the night, the wind got up, and I lay there listening to the canvas flapping, because I'd tied the guy lines in a hurry, any old how, crooked knots, and one of them on a slip loop altogether. In the morning, I crawled out to tighten them, and they had been tightened, all of them, with the same amount of slack, and the knot on each one lying with the same side turned up, the way you lay them when there's no need to hurry. I gave them a pull. They held better than they'd held for me. Well, all right then, I thought. The lads had got up earlier. Their hands were itching for something to do, and both of them slept till the sun was up. That day we went to look at the stream, and you ran on ahead and came back, ran on ahead and came back, and towards evening you started sitting down facing the forest, and just sitting. Not growling, no hackles up, just sitting and looking in one direction, the way you're sitting now. I decided at the time that something was out there hunting mice. That evening I threw the firewood down by the fire any old how, in an armful, because I was tired. In the morning, there was a wood pile standing there, a neat one, at the foot of a cedar, the ends turned outwards, poles laid underneath so the damp wouldn't draw up out of the moss, and bark laid over the top against the rain. My father used to stack it like that. I don't stack it like that. I never did learn, and Sashka can't do it, and Vitka certainly can't. I didn't say anything to the lads. Do you know why, Nada? Because out loud, it would have sounded stupid. We got it all handed to us ready-made, and they'd tidied up for us as well. What's there to complain about? And who to? I doused the fire pit for the night and left the burnt ends in it, the way I always leave them. Doused it, stirred it about, walked off. And in the morning the coals had been taken out, the ash raked into a little hollow at the edge and covered over with soil, and the stones set back in their circle more evenly than they'd stood before. And on top of it all lay the kindling, laid ready, birch bark right at the bottom, then split slivers, then fine dead twigs, in a little wigwam, every piece exactly in its place. And our pot was hanging on the pole, clean, scoured on the outside with sand until it was pale, and it had been black with soot right up to the handle since the spring. All that was left was to strike a match, Nada. Strike it, and breakfast. That night, I decided not to lie down. I sat like this, the way I'm sitting now, with my back to the tent, put some thicker wood on so it would burn a long while. And I sat, and there was nothing. And in the morning the coals had been taken out, the ash raked into a little hollow at the edge and covered over with soil, and the stones set back in their circle more evenly than they'd stood before. And on top of it all lay the kindling, laid ready, birch bark right at the bottom, then split slivers, then fine dead twigs, in a little wigwam, every piece exactly in its place. And our pot was hanging on the pole, clean, scoured on the outside with sand until it was pale, and it had been black with soot right up to the handle since the spring. All that was left was to strike a match, Nada. Strike it, and breakfast. That night, I decided not to lie down. I sat like this, the way I'm sitting now, with my back to the tent, put some thicker wood on so it would burn a long while. And I sat, and there was nothing. Not a rustle on the site, not a twig underfoot, not a light between the trunks, only the water going down below and you sighing in your sleep, the way you sigh. And in the morning there was nothing either. Everything stayed as I'd left it, my burnt ends and the ash and my crooked kindling that I'd laid out to spite them. Nobody had touched anything. I didn't sit up like that again. What's the good of sitting? I was sure to sleep the whole of the next day, and the site stood the way it had stood. You were eating well and sleeping well in those days, and honestly, that's what kept me steady. A dog can't lie. If there had been an animal coming around us, you'd have had your hackles up. You didn't. The only thing was, you wouldn't go down to the stream after dark. You'd walk to the edge of the site, sit down, and wait for me there. In the daytime, you ran about, but not in the dark. I trodden a path to the water at an angle, over a root, slippery. We all went sliding about down there. And then I went down, and I didn't recognize my own path. The branches at face height had been cut off at an angle, the cuts fresh and white, and the trimmings weren't thrown about, but gathered into a heap to one side. On the slippery bit, slabs had been laid down and pressed into the mud with a foot until they were flush, so they wouldn't rock. Down at the bottom, where the bank had crumbled away, a step had been cut into it. I stood there with the bucket and caught myself saying out loud, "Thank you." It just came out, the way it does in somebody else's house. On the last morning I got up to pack before anybody else. One of the straps on my rucksack was held on with a cord. I tied it back in May, and I tied it badly. The knot kept slipping, and I was pulling it up again every other day. And so I pick up the rucksack, and the strap has been retied. The same cord, mine, but the knot isn't mine. Flat, even, with 2 turns round the strap, and the ends cut off and sealed with a flame. I undid it to see how it was made, and I couldn't tie it back again, Nada. There you are. We left that day. Nothing happened. Nobody drove us off. Nobody showed themselves. Not a footprint on the sand by the water. Not a voice. We simply packed up and walked, and we talked about the fishing the whole way. And a year later, I came back here on my own, with you. And now I come every summer. I come and I have a look. The stones are in their circle. The pegs are still sitting in the moss. The branches have gone flat, of course, so I lay fresh ones. I split a bit more firewood, as much as I can get done before dark. I clear the path to the water. I put the step right. It keeps crumbling away. Nobody asked me to, Nada. Nobody even knows that I come here. I tell the lads I'm going for mushrooms, and they believe me, because I bring the mushrooms back. And I can't explain it either. I'm not frightened here. That's the funny part of it. I'm calmer here than I am at home. It's just that somebody once did my work for me and did it well. And a thing like that has to be paid back. A little at a time, at least. In the only way I know how, at least. Go on, old girl. Get some sleep. You've done your running for today. I heard you drinking down at the stream. Sleep, Naidushka. I'll put some wood on and lie down beside you. In the morning, we'll go back slowly. There's no hurry for you and me. We set off in the dark, the three of us. Me, Kostya, and Kostya's neighbor, who said about 10 words in the whole day. That's how everybody goes for mushrooms if they go seriously. You have to leave while it's still dark, so that by first light you're already a long way out, up on the far ridges where nobody has got in before you that morning. You walk in the dark for an hour and a half, and only then does it start to go gray between the trunks, and the forest comes up slowly, the way a picture comes up on wet paper. First the moss under your feet appears, then the trunks, then the tops of them, and last of all, the distance. While it's dark, the forest seems small, and with the light it opens out in every direction at once. I'll tell this the way the old man at the ranger station told it to me, and where he was too sparing with it, I'll put in my own, and I'll say straight away when a bit is mine. By the time it was light, we came out onto an old campsite. The place was old, 30 years old by the look of it. The moss round the edge of the fire pit had grown up into a ridge of its own, and instead of a table, there was a log split in half, rubbed shiny by other people's elbows. Campsites like that live in the forest for decades, used in turn by people who are strangers to one another, and there's always something left behind on them. An empty tin of stewed meat, a nail driven into a trunk, a bit of rope on a branch. Nobody leaves it there on purpose. It's just that things go out of the forest more slowly than people do. There was a knife lying on the log, an ordinary one, short with something wound round the handle. I didn't look at it closely. Kostya said, if they left it, they didn't want it. I said, it means they dropped it and never came back. And I put it in a side pocket of my rucksack because a knife in the forest is a real thing, and in the forest, you don't leave real things lying about. And it's from this point on that the part I can't explain begins. An hour and a half later, we were coming up onto a ridge, and before we'd even reached the crest, I said out loud, "The ridge is going to drop away now, and there'll be a felled clearing down there, an old one, grown over with willow herb, and along its left edge, a stream." The ridge dropped away. There was the felled clearing, grown over with willow herb, and along the left edge ran a stream. Kostya looked back and asked whether I'd been here before. I said, "No, this is the first time in my life I've been in this forest." He didn't answer, but I could see he'd made a note of it. By midday, we came out at the ranger station. The old man was sitting on the porch mending a net. He looked at the rucksack, not at us. "You took it off the log," he said. It wasn't a question, and I didn't answer. I got the knife out and put it down on the step. He didn't touch it. "Take it away and it follows you," he said. "Leave it and it'll be in your sack." By sack, he meant the rucksack. That's my correction. He didn't explain words like that. I'm passing it on as it was. At the time, I thought it was just a saying. Old men have plenty of those. and that what he wanted was for us to stay the night with him and pay for the bathhouse. I don't think that now. But in all these years, no other explanation has turned up either. We left the knife there on the step, walked off about 3 kilometers, sat down for a bite to eat, and I reached into the rucksack for the bread. The knife was in the side pocket, in the same place it had been that morning. Kostya had watched me put it down at the ranger station. He didn't say anything, he only stopped chewing. We went back. The old man was still mending his net. "I told you," he said. And he said nothing else until the evening. I sat on his porch and laid it out for myself in order, calmly, the way you lay out a problem you understand. There are exactly 2 options after all, and he had named both of them out loud before we'd even tried. Take it with you, then it goes after you, and at least you know where it is. Leave it, then it's with you anyway, only you find out about it later, at a rest stop, with the bread in your hand. He didn't offer a third, and to be honest, I didn't ask. And he isn't the sort of man you put a second question to, if he hasn't answered the first. Now, about me. We went back a different way, along the river, the longer way, and I started naming small things ahead of time. Not the lie of the land. The lie of the land you can still guess from the slope and from where the water runs off. But small things. I said there'd be a fallen birch round the bend with 3 axe marks on it. There were 3. I said there was somebody's mitten lying on a stone at the ford. A left one. It was a left one. Kostya walked behind me and repeated it out loud after me. Said birch, birch. Said mitten, mitten. He said it evenly, as though he found it funny, and that made it worse than if he had kept quiet. We spent the night by the river, on the sand. In the night, Kostya asked what else I knew. I said this to him. Under the right bank, about 3 paces up from the water, there's an iron barrel sitting in the clay, and you can't see it because the turf has grown over it. We dug the bank out with sticks by torchlight. The barrel was there, rusted, grown into the ground, older than the both of us, and it really couldn't be seen from anywhere, not from the water, not from above. After that, Kostya walked beside me and not behind. The knife was in the rucksack the whole time. I didn't take it out and I didn't check on it. I didn't want to know whether it was in there or not. We left at night so as to be on the first bus by morning. We walked through thin woodland with our torches. You could already hear the main road, and I stopped by a big flat stone, of the sort there are plenty of out there. I said there was a knife lying under that stone. We got it out. The handle was wound round with insulating tape, just as I'd said. How I knew that, I still can't tell you. And it's the one thing about that night I never did work out. The side pocket of the rucksack was empty. I turned it out in front of everybody, and everybody looked, and all Kostya said was, "Well then, now we're back to 1 knife again." He was right. There had been 1 knife the whole way. It simply kept turning up somewhere other than where we'd left it. There's almost nothing left to tell, and that, I think, is the most important part of it. I brought the knife home. It sat in the toolbox for a while, then it moved out to the cottage along with the toolbox. Then it ended up on a shelf in the shed, between a jar of screws and a coil of wire, and it's still lying there now. For the first few years, I'd glance at it now and then I stopped. Things that do nothing have a way of becoming invisible, and it did. Not long ago, I picked it up in good light, on purpose, to have a proper look at it. A cheap pressed thing, the sort they used to sell by the crate in any hardware shop. The handle is wound round with blue insulating tape, and the tape has dried out and is coming away in rings. The blade is blunt, with a nick near the spine, and the rusty bloom on it won't come off anymore. You couldn't cut bread with it. To be honest, you couldn't do anything with it. The old man is long dead, I should think, and the ranger station is most likely not there anymore either. I don't remember the way to it, and I've never gone looking. And the knife lies there. When I'm in the shed, I push it aside to get at the wire, and I put it back, and nothing happens. And because nothing happens, every year it looks a little more like an ordinary old knife that is simply lying on a shelf in a shed. You're walking up the left bank, and the left bank is the correct one to be on. Only go a little slower, please. There's nowhere for me to hurry to, and when you think about it, nowhere for you either. What you're looking for hasn't gone anywhere in all these days. I want to explain to you where to look. I can see your torches going along the bushes up from the water's edge, and you've already gone past the place. You went past it easily and quickly, and that's the whole of it. You went past there far too easily. There were 4 of us. An easy river, warm water. We were on our 6th day, and nobody was in any hurry. We slept on the shingle bars. A shingle bar is a good place for the night because there are no midges on it. The firewood is lying right there to hand, and you can hear the current all night long. The current sounds even, like somebody else's calm breathing, and you fall asleep to it without even trying. Anybody who has spent a night by a river knows this and sees nothing strange in it. Our days were all the same and quiet. In the morning, we take the tarp down. By midday, we've made whatever distance we've made. By 5, we're looking for a wider bar and stopping. In the evening, we cook. We dry our socks on the paddles. We talk about nothing. It's a very good way to live, and I still think I've never known anything better in my life. The strange thing I noticed wasn't in the river. It was in myself, and I didn't notice it straight away. Sleepiness is supposed to be an even sort of thing. It comes over a man all at once, the whole of him. You sit down, it comes over you. You lie down where you were sitting. But ours wasn't even. Ours had a direction to it. You're sitting by the fire and you're nodding off. And you're nodding not downwards, but sideways. Your head is pulling you not towards the sleeping bag behind you, but on up the bar to where the shingle runs into the old log jam and the dark side channel goes off behind it. You get up, take a dozen steps that way, and your eyes start closing on their own, warm and pleasant, the way they do on a train. You come back to the fire, and the sleep lets go of you, and you sit there wide awake, and you can't think why you got up. I said to the lads at the time that we'd got a back-to-front compass. The needle shows you not where to go, but where you mustn't lie down. And the harder it pulls, the more you mustn't. I said it as a joke, and we laughed. Remember that, lads. Today it's worth more to you than anything else I can tell you. Going that way, on up the bar, was easier than coming back. Not to the eye, but underfoot. To the eye, it's ordinary shingle up there, gray and uneven, the same as everywhere. It was underfoot that it was easier. The roots that had been getting in the way and catching at your boots all day stopped turning up at all. I walked those 40 paces without once looking down, and I didn't stumble once. I came back over the same ground, watching my feet carefully, and twice I caught my toe on a stone. By evening, the water had come up a hand's breadth. Somewhere higher up the river, it was raining, and where we were, it was clear, and all you could see on our bar was that the wet strip of shingle had moved closer to the fire. At the next stop for the night, it all happened again, and the bar was a different one. but the side was the same, upstream towards the dark water behind the jam. I went off that way at dusk, without a torch, slowly, on purpose. Not once did the shingle slide underfoot. It lay flat, as though somebody had laid it out to fit my step, and the sole of my boot came down on the whole of it at once, the whole length of it, the way it does on a floor indoors. I stood there in the dark, listening to the current, and I felt only one thing. This is a very good place to lie down. Not that you can, that it's good. And that's the thing to watch for when you go on. Not tracks. The water hasn't left you any tracks. The water came up and took everything off the bar that was there. Watch for where it's easy for you. Easy isn't the sign of a good path. It's the sign of a direction. It rained up above for 2 days and nights. The water rose higher than our fire pit in that time, and we moved the camp closer to the trees. It turned cold. We all slept badly, and everybody except me complained that they couldn't get off to sleep. And I slept beautifully. The nearer I was to the water, the sounder I slept. The last night I remember in great detail. I came out of the tent at about 3, at the deadest hour, when the sky is already lightening along the edge, but there's no light yet. I wasn't stumbling. I was walking calmly and with my eyes shut, and I never once needed to open them. The ground came up, step for step, underfoot, under each foot exactly where it was wanted, as though it were coming to meet me. The footing was always there to meet me. That is the thing that's most wrong in the whole of my story, and I'd ask you to hear it. Ground doesn't behave like that. Ground is indifferent. It turns under you. It doesn't fit itself to you. And this ground fitted itself to me, and I was warm and comfortable. And I walked as far as the place where the current is loudest of all, and I lay down. And after that comes the part I can't make out, and you'll have to do the choosing along with me. Leoka was on watch at the fire that night, and Leoka says that I never got up. He says that he sat there until the gray light, that he had my tent in sight the whole time, that nobody came out of it, and that he called out to me in the morning and got nothing back. And the place where I'd been lying backs him up as well. The hollow my body had made was in the tent on my side of it, and there wasn't any track going up the bar. Although, to be fair, a track up there would have been washed off in any case. And I remember the water and the dark side channel and how good the walking was. I've thought about it for a long time, longer than I've thought about anything else. Leoka isn't lying. There's no reason for him to. He's a simple lad and he's frightened to this day. But I remember myself too. I remember the cold coming off the water onto my face and the way a flat stone settled under my heel. Both versions add up just as neatly as each other, and neither one falls apart. Maybe I never went anywhere, and in that case, I don't know what happened to me, and I never will know now. Or maybe I got up and walked there myself, and knew where I was going, and was happy the whole way. I have chosen the second one. I chose it not because it's the truer one. I've weighed both of them honestly, and I can't prove either. I chose it because with the first one, I lie there and don't sleep, and with the second one, I fall asleep. And I'm here for a long while yet, and I need my sleep. So go slowly, lads. Go up the left bank as far as the jam and stop there. When the walking starts to come easy to you, really noticeably easy, when your legs begin going by themselves and you catch yourself not having looked down for a long while, sit down and wait for the light. Don't lie down anywhere. Sit and listen to the current. It's even here all night long. You can't mistake it. And in the morning, go home. The river's warm, the weather is settling, and the water has already started to drop. By evening, the bar will be open again. gray and ordinary, and there'll be absolutely nothing on it to look at. I write the card out well in advance, a fortnight or so before we set off, because writing about a walk is very nearly as good as doing it. The food is worked out, the grain is weighed into its little bags, the first aid kit is packed. All that's left is to set out the days, and I set them out in detail with something in hand as though I were already walking. Route card. School group, 8 children and me. Setting off the 10th of July, back on the 16th, in time for the evening bus. I'll leave the card with the ranger at his station. He'll take it, ask how many children I've got with me, and put it away in a folder. In the autumn, I'll call in and collect it. Day 1. From the bus stop up the forest track, 18 kilometers, camp where the streams meet. We'll set off at 8 in the cool of the morning, while the rucksacks are still heavy and everybody's still cheerful. The track up there is wide and churned up with ruts. It's dull walking, but you can't get lost on it, and you can count the posts. I'll put the stop 2 hours in, at the bend in the track where the old lookout tower stands. We'll sit 20 minutes, no more. Get the rucksacks off, and on we go. And the stop after that one I'll set closer than this one, because they're children with rucksacks, and there's nobody out here to hurry them. We'll cook lunch by the stream, out of a packet of soup and a tin of stewed meat, and everybody will say they've never eaten anything better, and I'll explain once again why it seems that way in the forest. Then before dusk, we'll get to the meeting of the streams and stop for the night. Fire, tents, the same songs as always, and they'll go to bed late. I know that in advance. Day 2. Up the left-hand stream to the old burnt ground, 14 kilometers. Camp on the burnt ground. It'll go easier here. The path is well trodden, the climb is even, the water's beside you the whole way. We'll set off at 9. It's a shame to wake them earlier. The second morning is always the hard one. We'll walk about 40 minutes at a time and sit down. And the stop after that one I'll set closer than this one, because there's no sense hurrying to the burnt ground. There isn't much to look at there. The burnt ground is old, 20 years or so. The raspberries stand in a wall across it. We'll pick them into our mugs, and the evening will turn out long and quiet. There's as much firewood there as you like, dry and ringing, so the fire will be a big one, and somebody's bound to ask to sit up with it till morning. Day 3. From the burnt ground to the clearing, 9 kilometers, arriving by lunchtime. A man who had spent a night in the clearing told me about it, and he went on for a long while, because there's really nothing to tell. A flat, dry place, the grass short, the spruce coming in close above it and holding off the wind. Water 2 steps away. No mosquitoes at all for some reason. And the ground under the tent dry even after rain. He says you hardly need a mat under you there. And the main thing, he says, is that you sleep there the way you don't sleep at home. You lie down, and you wake up and it's morning already, with no middle of the night, without that hour when you lie there listening to the forest. And you get up not wrung out, but feeling the way you haven't felt in a long time. He said it to me twice over, and both times with the same expression, as though he didn't quite believe himself. 9 kilometers is half a day, but we'll stretch them out. We'll set off at 10 and walk slowly. We'll make a stop half an hour after setting off, for no reason at all, in the sun. And the stop after that one, I'll set closer than this one, because it's downhill and there's no reason left to hurry at all. By lunchtime, we'll be there. We'll pitch the tents in a half circle. Put the fire over towards the edge so the smoke goes off into the spruce, and we won't go anywhere until the evening. Rain 3 days now. Stream has risen. Day 4. Rest day at the clearing. There's almost nothing to write on this page, and it's the one I like best. I put the rest day in just in case the rain sets in case somebody gets a blister, in case we simply don't get up in time. But I already know that isn't why we'll need it. We'll get up late, we'll go down to the water to wash. That's about 7 minutes from the tents, over the short grass, barefoot. And we'll sit down after that closer than there, right by the tents, because nobody wants to be traipsing back and forth on a day like that. In the afternoon, we'll dry things on a line, play word games, and sleep in turns. Anybody who wants to will go for water with the pot. Anybody who doesn't won't. And I won't be getting anyone up. A rest day is a rest day. What makes a good place good is that afterwards, there's nothing to tell about it. No view, no rock, no lake, no story. Just flat, dry, warm, and, for some reason, very quiet. I know in advance that in the evening I'll sit by the fire and think that we have, as it happens, one spare day still in hand. Day 5. From the clearing over the saddle down to the dirt road, 16 kilometers. This is the day I write last, and I write it unwillingly, but it has to be written. A card without the way back isn't a card. We'll set off early, about 7, before everybody scatters. I'll put the stop an hour in. No, half an hour. And the stop after that one I'll set closer than this one, because it's uphill, and by the end of a walk the rucksacks are somehow no lighter. On the saddle we'll look back down at the clearing, stand there a while, and go on. By evening, the road, by night, the bus. And I write all of that down too, properly, with the hours and the kilometers. Day 6. Spare. I write it in case the 5th doesn't come off. The weather, somebody's foot, anything at all. Then we'll come back down from the saddle to the water, pitch the tents in the old place, on the flattened grass, and wait it out as long as we need to. We've got food in hand for 2 days extra. We'll sit down to eat, and the stop after that one I'll set closer than this one, because it will be the same log we ate on when we arrived. The paper was never collected. Card for next July. Group, whoever can come, about 6 of us. Setting off on the 12th, the clearing on the 3rd day, a rest day, back along the same path. I'll book my leave earlier so I don't have to fit in around the shifts. Card for July. There'll be 2 of us, traveling light, no children. It's simpler that way, and we'll be at the clearing by the evening of the 1st day. I'll buy the tickets in advance, and I won't be handing them back. Card for July. I'll go on my own. I'll get there in a day. I'll stand a while and come back, if I don't feel like staying. Card. I'll set off and get there. These cards I write at home, at the table, and I don't give them to anybody. They just lie in the drawer, folded in 4. To hand a card in is very nearly to go, and by the look of things, I'm not going. The leave comes through in August, or it's the rain, or it's work, or the train gets canceled a day beforehand. Small things, not one of which means anything on its own. I've slept in the forest since then, and more than once. On the burnt ground, at the meeting of the streams, by the road, on a dry rise above the river that everybody had told me was good. You sleep there the ordinary way, with the middle of the night, with a long morning, with the cold in your back towards dawn. The same as everybody, the same as I always slept before. But that sleep, the even one with no middle to it, I've never found anywhere else, and I'm not waiting for it anymore. But I'll write the card for next July all the same, nearer to spring when the snow has gone. Even the writing of it is good. Now don't you worry, I'm not here for long. I'm here till Sunday, and then I'll pack up and go, and you'll have more room again. I'm speaking quietly because it's night and because there's nobody near me, but I'm not talking to myself. If I were talking to myself, I wouldn't be explaining it all in this much detail. The place here is a simple one. A bog and an old causeway across it. Logs laid crossways so you can get over the soft ground. And on this side of it, a dry little patch where I've been pitching my tent for years. The water in the peat pits is rusty. It smells of iron and bog myrtle, and afterwards, that smell stays on your hands all the way back to town. The mosquito is the main living thing here. It rings steadily, thin, without a break, and you get so used to that ringing that you fall asleep under it the way you fall asleep under rain. By morning, there are little lumps swelling up on your wrist, and I find them in the dark with a finger, and that is the right order of things. It means everything is as it always is. The first night, everything was as it always is. I did up the door. The tab on the zip is cold. You always have to find it by feel. Got into my sleeping bag, tucked a rolled-up jacket under my head, listened to that thin ringing standing there beyond the fabric, and fell asleep before I could think about anything at all. In the morning, I climbed out barefoot, and my feet felt strange. The grass is wet to the knee, and under the camp it's dry. The dew settles here so heavily that your trouser legs are wet above the knee before you've even got as far as the causeway. And under my feet, it hadn't dried off overnight. It was dry in itself. The moss crumbled under my palm and gave off dust like chaff out of hay. And the edge of that dry ground ran roughly in a circle. I put it down to the fire. Only, I hadn't had a fire. I cook on a stove. I put it down to the wind, but the dew was lying on the causeway as well, and on the bushes, and on my own boots by the door. And there was no mosquito that morning either. Not hardly any. None. The ringing stood further off, over the bog, steady and thick, the way it ought to be. And over the patch, there was nothing. That was when I first spoke out loud. Listen, well, all right then. Well, thank you, if that's how it is. It really had got tiresome. Nobody answered me, and I wasn't expecting anybody to. I just said out loud what I'd noticed and went to put the water on. The day went by as usual. I walked out along the causeway. The logs there are black and slippery. They give softly under your weight, and you have to try each one with your foot first and only then step on it. Fetched water, sat on the bank for a while watching a bubble rise and burst in a peat pit, and came back towards evening. My boots got soaked through on the way back, and on the patch they dried out overnight, and in the morning they were stiff and warm. The next morning the dry ground was wider, and I saw it myself without any checking at all. Yesterday the edge ran past the willow bush, and now the bush was standing inside it. Its lower leaves were dry, the upper ones in dew. The grass is wet to the knee, and under the camp it's dry, and the edge wasn't roughly anymore. It had been drawn. I paced it out, from the spot where I'd heated my water on the first evening to the edge, 11 in any direction, whichever way you turn. I always pitch the tent at the side of the patch, mind, so the sun gets on it in the morning. I didn't measure it again, not once. It was enough for me that the number comes out the same in every direction. And walking round and round your own camp is the sort of occupation that starts to make a man uncomfortable. By that day, I'd worked out one more thing, and I'll say it myself because there's nobody else to. There are no birds to be heard. Over the bog, there's somebody about. A warbler rattling away, a crane calling a long way off. And over this bank, nothing. And here it's important not to muddle two things up. This isn't silence. Silence is when there's somebody there to be quiet. And here, there's nobody to be quiet. The web between the tent pole and the guy line was hanging there in one piece, but empty. No spider, no midge in the threads, and no dew on it either. And the webs out beyond the edge had sagged and grown heavy, and all sorts of small things had collected in them overnight. "You'll have to excuse me," I said into the dark. "I'm not in your way. I only sleep here. If you want to grow, then grow. I'll move over." In the evening, I deliberately tipped out a handful of dry breadcrumbs by the stone where the vole's hole had always been. In the morning, the crumbs were lying exactly the way I'd poured them out. No dew on them, no tracks, not one crumb moved aside. The grass is wet to the knee, and under the camp it's dry, and the edge doesn't wander anymore. It runs as if along a string, and you can see it from the causeway, a pale band across the dark bank. It has gone straight over the boulder, and the boulder lies half dry and half in dew, and your palm can feel the difference if you run it across slowly. And it has gone straight across the little stream as well. The water runs on as it likes, but on one side its banks are dry, and the grass there is standing as if it were July. Nothing came. Nobody stood beyond the fabric. Nobody walked round it. Nobody rustled. Nobody breathed. There's nothing to say about that except one thing. From one morning to the next, there was less life around me, and nothing else changed at all. The lumps on my wrist faded and stopped itching, and no new ones appeared. My mug of tea stood by the door and didn't mist over, and the dew wasn't settling on my clothes either. I went out at 6 in the morning, walked about on my own dry ground, and came back with my trouser legs completely dry, which on this bog never happens at all. The last night I lay awake, and there was nothing for me to listen to except myself. My own breathing and my sleeve rubbing against the fabric of the sleeping bag. And, a long way off, out past the edge, that steady, thin ringing still standing over the water. The one I come here for, if I'm honest. "Listen," I said into the dark, quietly and without any hard feelings. "I'm going to go anyway, on Sunday. There's no need for you to hurry. You've nowhere to hurry to, and it's a couple of hours to my car, and I'd like to set off while it's light." By morning, the grass is wet to the knee, and under the camp it's dry, and the edge has gone across the tent. It has settled along it as evenly as if it had been drawn with a pair of compasses. My right palm on the ground sheet, dry, my left, cold, and the dew coming through the fabric. By the next daylight, the tent will be inside it altogether, because the dry goes from the middle outwards, and it isn't going to go round me. I've thought up an explanation for myself, and it suits me. It doesn't walk about, and it doesn't look for anything. It simply gets bigger. It begins where I stood, heating my water on the first evening, and it grows out from there, evenly in every direction, and it doesn't care what ends up inside it. A stone, a stream, a bush, me. It isn't about me. Living things leave it of their own accord, because there's nothing there for anything living to do. And I stayed, because I've got somewhere to sleep. Checking it is simple. I've got one zip on the door. I can undo it in a minute and have a look, and see whether the edge has got as far as the far peg. And then it'll all be clear. I know it's a minute, and I'm not going to. I'll shift over onto the right-hand side where it's dry, pull the sleeping bag up to my chin and sleep out what's left of the night. In the morning, I'll take the tent down, pack it away wet, that's how it's turned out, and walk off along the causeway, trying each log with my foot. And somewhere out in the middle of the bog, the mosquito will meet me again, steady, thin, without a break, and I won't wave it away. Go to sleep, I'll tell it quietly. Only don't roll over, it rustles. You asked me today why we pitched the tent here, out on the open bank where the wind is, and not down in that hollow where it's quiet and the water's closer. And I told you, it's damp down there. That's true, but it isn't the whole truth. And since you're not sleeping anyway, I'll tell you the rest. Not all of it. I'll leave some things out. Don't take it the wrong way. I was 25 then. There were 4 of us came out here with our rods, with no particular plan, just to do nothing for 3 days. There were fishermen camped along the bank, 5 or so of them. They lived here for weeks at a time. A tarp, a pot on a chain, tackle on stakes, everything settled in. Good men. One of them, I'll tell you later which one. All right, later. Towards evening it turned cold, not the way it is tonight, properly cold. The water was steaming, the grass went stiff, and everybody was into their rucksacks for down jackets. And I was all right. I sat there in nothing but a fleece, and I was just right, the way you are in a room. One of the fishermen looked over at me and asked, "Lad, why are you sitting there with nothing on?" And I was even a bit proud of it. Look how hardy I am. It wasn't me who suggested spending the night in the hollow. It really is quieter down there. No wind at all. The slopes come in close. The alder stands like a wall, and you hear the water as though it were coming from under the ground, steady and without any splashing. An ordinary sort of place. Pretty even in the daytime. The fisherman turned it down, briefly, with no explanation, and that was the end of the conversation. One of them just lifted his eyes from his tackle, shook his head, and lowered them again. And by the way he did it, I ought to have understood everything. I didn't understand. I was 25, and it seemed to me that people turned things down out of foolishness. The 3 of us went down there. What happened in the night, I'm not going to tell you. No, not because it's frightening, because there's nothing to tell. That's the whole of it. There were no footsteps, no voices, no animal. The fire burned evenly and burned down, the way any fire does. The kettle boiled in the time a kettle takes. I went back over it afterwards on purpose. My watch kept proper time. In the morning, I checked it against the fisherman's, to the minute. And I slept well down there, better than I do at home. It's just that at some point, how do I put it? I undid my jacket. I got hot by the fire. I took the fleece off as well and sat there in a t-shirt. And next to me, the 2 of them were sitting in down jackets with their hoods up, and they looked at me, one of them for a long time. He didn't say anything. He just stopped looking into the fire and started looking at me. Then I lay down, and nothing happened. Nothing at all. In the morning, now listen, here's the answer to your question. In the morning, there was frost lying on everything. On the grass, on the upturned boat, on both of my friends' sleeping bags. White, like icing sugar. And my sleeping bag was dark and dry. And they pointed it out to me. They said, "Listen, what's going on with you?" We went back to the fisherman, and that one, he came over, took my hand in both of his and held it. His palms were like warm boards. He said, "Your hand's like ice, and you haven't so much as shivered." And he added a word I'm not going to repeat to you. You won't hear it from me. At home, everything was ordinary. A month went by, maybe a bit more. I'd sit with the window open, and it was already the sort of October where the shutters were banging out in the yard. And everybody who came round asked me from the doorway why my place felt like being outdoors. They all asked, one after another, and I didn't understand the question. I was just right. For a long time, I thought I'd simply been lucky with my health. And then I noticed something else, and that part is frightening. Only not frightening in a child's way, in a grown man's way. You listen calmly. I had a notebook, a daft one really. I used to write down in it what I was going to do. Buy a boat, finish the extension, learn how to... never mind what. I used to enjoy thinking about how things would be 20 years on, the way you think about a film you haven't seen yet. And after that night, the notebook came to an end. It wasn't lost, it didn't burn. I simply stopped writing in it. And I noticed 6 months later, by accident, when I was looking in the desk for something else, there it was, open in the middle, the last line left half finished, and I didn't want to finish it. Not too lazy, not too busy, I just didn't want to. The way you don't want what belongs to somebody else. Anything far off had stopped being interesting to me, completely, as though somebody had carefully taken out the part you make plans with and put everything else back in its place, neatly, without a mark. And I started counting not forwards, but back from the end. People would say to me, in 10 years or so, they'll put a road through here. And I'd catch myself working out whether I'd make it or not. Not how good that'll be, but will I make it? 25 years old, a grown man, and in his head he's measuring out what's left the way you measure the woodpile before winter. Will it last till spring, or won't it? From the outside, nothing changed. No illness, no weakness. The doctors found nothing wrong with me. I worked, I carried sacks about. I met your mom afterwards. They didn't take my body, they took my time. That's why nobody goes down there, not because somebody lives there. A night down there doesn't kill you. It takes payment in advance. You come away alive, healthy, on your own 2 feet. You take away the same body in the same hands. Only the store you live out of has a few years less in it. There won't be any sign at all. You'll notice it yourself by the fact that you've stopped wanting anything far off. One of those two moved away afterwards, and we didn't write to each other. Don't ask. Now you're going to ask what it's like these days. These days, nothing, and that's the good part. Only, ever since that night, I wake up at the same hour, not from an alarm. There is no alarm. I don't set one, and I'm not going to. It's just that at some point, my eyes open on their own, and I already know that it's that hour. You look at your phone, and there it is. At first, it bothered me. I'd lie there listening, waiting for something, and then I wouldn't drop off again till it got light. And then I got used to it and learned how to get back to sleep. It isn't hard at all, honestly. You lie there, you listen to the water going by or the wind humming in the pipe. You count up to something if you feel like it, and off you go into the second sleep, and that one is even softer than the first. Your mom knows, and she doesn't wake me. She says that at that hour, I just sigh and turn over onto my other side. The years that stopped being mine came back to me like that, as 1 hour, every night for years and years. And I'll tell you honestly, it isn't the worst trade. At that hour, I think about good things, about you, about the fishing tomorrow, about how we need to buy smaller hooks because nothing bites for you on the ones we've got. That's all. Go to sleep. We're not going down there. Not because there's something there, but because I simply don't want to. In the morning, we'll get up, light the fire, and I'll show you that knot that wouldn't come out right for you yesterday. Right then. Listen quietly, once through. Then we'll sort out the pairs, and after that, we won't be going back over any of it. We set off tomorrow at 6, while the dew's still down. While the dew's down, you can see where somebody's walked ahead of you. The grass lies flat, and the track holds for about 3 hours. And by midday, the grass comes back up and we'll be walking over clean ground, as though nobody had ever been through here before us. We start from the turning off the dirt track and go up, along the left bank of the stream. Keep the stream on your right the whole way. There's only the one here, and with it beside you, it's hard to get lost even if you set out to. In the morning, I'll mark out the squares off the map, one for each pair, and neighboring squares overlap by a strip about 20 paces wide, and that strip gets walked by both pairs, not just the one. And now the part that isn't on the map. I was on that dirt track last year, not looking for anybody, just riding through. There were 6 of us, on holiday, rucksacks on the racks, 5th day out, and we had the most ordinary rule there is, the usual cycling one. The freshest man rides in front. Not the strongest, the freshest at that particular minute. He sets the pace, the rest fall in behind him, and the group doesn't come apart. Sensible, as rules go. And it's because of that one that the whole thing added up. Back to business. Whistles, 1 per pair, round your neck, not in your pocket. Don't shout, your voice goes inside an hour, and a whistle carries across a hollow. We take water from the stream upstream of the camp, not below it, and we boil it, even if it feels like a waste of time. You find something, don't pick it up. Stop where you are, blow the whistle, wait for me. That evening we camped by the water, got a fire going, and afterwards I spent a very long time remembering how we'd been sitting. Everybody was sitting facing the fire. That's how people do sit. Knees to the warmth, palms to the warmth, back to the cold, because of the midges, and because there's nothing else to look at. But Mitya was sitting half-turned, his body out towards the dark, his face still to us, but his shoulders already turned that way, out past the edge of the firelight. And he was talking to us over his shoulder, quite calmly, with no idea he was doing it. In the morning, I asked him why he'd sat like that. He looked at me the way you look at a man who's got you mixed up with somebody else. He'd sat the same as everybody, he said. Right. At night, we keep the fire in one place. We don't light a second one, even if it means somebody has a long walk to get warm. We'll have the one fire, and that matters more than comfort. We keep watch in 2s, an hour a turn. An hour because in an hour a man doesn't have time to fall asleep sitting up. And in 2 he does, and I've tested that on myself. One of you watches the fire, the other watches the people. And now the main thing, the thing I'm telling you all this for. Watch the pace, not your own, somebody else's. If after a day or so, one of you starts feeling better than he did the day before, if a man starts getting up before everybody else, putting the kettle on, going on ahead and waiting for the rest of you at the top of a climb, don't be glad for him. Just swap places and put him at the back. It isn't a punishment, it's arithmetic. Ours was called, well, it doesn't matter what he was called. He'd been riding with us from the first day, and there was nothing about him to notice. On the third day, he perked up. By the fourth, he was already out in front, turning round and waiting. We were glad for him. We said, "He's got into it. That's what being in condition does for a man." And meanwhile, we were sitting down on the ground at every stop. And we were taking longer and longer to get up in the mornings. First, it was one of us asking for another 10 minutes. Then all of us were asking. And we'd talk each other into setting off later, and we'd put it down to the dew or the mist, or there being no real hurry anyway. We packed up in silence. The tents took twice as long to fold as they had on the first day, and it didn't strike anybody as odd. On the second night, it was Dasha sitting side on at the fire. Not half turned anymore, but properly side on. Knees to the trees, shoulders to the trees, one ear left for us. I looked at her across the fire and realized I was seeing the same thing again, only turned further round. And Mitya that evening was sitting square with the rest of us and remembered nothing at all about the night before. Dasha didn't remember either afterwards. Said it was the smoke. She turned away from the smoke. The smoke that night was going the other way. Now, the housekeeping. We eat in the open at midday. No fires in the daytime. Dry rations. Water, 20 minutes, up and on. We're back at the cars while it's still light. Not at dusk, while it's still light. And we count ourselves. Every time we regroup, we count out loud, by heads. Not, looks like everyone's here, but out loud and right to the end. We counted ourselves back then as well. And it always came to 6. 6 set off, 6 came back. And here I want you to understand me properly. Nobody went missing from our lot. Not one man. That isn't what this is about at all. It's about the kilometers. On the first day, we did 60. On the second, 50 odd. Then 40. Then 25. And that one already took some doing. And he rode exactly the same. Exactly as he had on the first day, and he didn't sweat on the climbs. The sum seemed to add up. Whatever went out of us went into him, and nothing flowed back the other way. He didn't feel sorry for us, and he didn't chivvy us along. He just waited at the top, one foot up on the pedal, watching us come up. And when we came up, he'd be the first to move off. The last night, I remember sitting down at the fire, facing it. That much I remember for certain. And I came to, sitting with my back to the fire, my back in the warmth, my face in the dark, my eyes already used to it, and I could make out the tree trunks 30 paces in. How long I'd been sitting like that, I don't know. My legs had gone numb, so it must have been a long while. Behind me, they were putting wood on, talking amongst themselves, laughing quietly, and nobody said a word. In the morning, we packed up and rode on. That's all. At home, I sat down and worked it out. I wanted to understand how much had been taken off us. An hour was taken. We came out at the station an hour later than it should have been by any reckoning. And that hour hadn't gone anywhere. It simply wasn't there. And strength was taken. Enough that afterwards I slept 10 hours a night for a week. And after that, I started looking for what that hour had got in the way of. Who might have needed it? We didn't miss the train. The train was in the evening. Nobody was late for work. Everybody still had 2 days of holiday left. Nobody fell ill. Nobody fell out with anybody. Nothing came unstuck for a single one of us. The sums came out right. What they took off us was exactly what we hadn't needed. I went through the whole thing again later, with a clear head, and again I found nothing. Not one place where that hour would have been of any use to me. Not one thing I failed to do because of that week of sleeping. And that's what still keeps hold of me. Not the dark behind my back, and not Michi's shoulders. It's that the payment was picked out so exactly. So somebody was counting. So somebody was looking at what we had spare. So somebody knew more about us than we knew ourselves. And if tomorrow something gets taken there again, an hour off one of us, a bit of strength off another, we won't miss it that time either. So, in pairs. So, whistle round your neck. So, watch the pace. And that's why I'm warning you. Though if I'm honest, there's nothing to warn you about. We set off at 6. You asked me to tell you the route in order. All right, I'll tell it. Only don't expect it to come out neatly. It's a long time since I put it back together out loud. There were 4 of us, late in the autumn, out where there's almost no path and you have to keep to the water. From the bridge, down along the bank, about 3 kilometers, as far as the old clearing. Then the forest ride. Then the ford. No, hang on. The ford came before the ride. After the ford, we dried ourselves off by a fire, and we walked the ride already dry. So it goes like this: bridge, bank, ford, clearing, ride. The first night's camp was on the ride, by a stream. I remember the fire better than I remember the road. If I'm honest, the fire was what we went for. In the daytime, you walk and you say nothing, and in the evening, you sit down and off it starts. Who heard what? Who saw what with his own eyes? Who'll vouch for whom? Stories till morning. We'd sit until the man telling it got to the end. That was how it had settled with us, without anybody ever agreeing to it. Once he's told it right through, then we break up for the night. That first evening, we sat on a long time, right through to the hour when the embers don't warm you anymore. They only glow. I remember that, or rather, I remember that it went on a long time. And in the morning, Sinya asked, "So who put the last log on the fire last night? Do you remember?" And nobody could. The log was lying there in the fire pit, burnt through in the middle, lying there plainly enough. It hadn't got there by itself, and as for who put it there, between the 4 of us there was nobody. We had a laugh about it and went on. That sort of thing does happen. You're tired, your hands do something and you never notice, and the hands know all about it themselves. After that there was a climb, gentle, long, up through thin spruce. At the top there's a scree, stones under moss, slow going. Beyond the scree there's a tarn, and the second night's camp was at the tarn. No, the tarn was the third. The second was the camp under the crag. I missed it out because under the crag we were already pitching in the dark, and I can't see it properly. So, ride, spruce, scree, crag, tarn. Under the crag that evening we turned in earlier than usual, before the embers had even burnt down. Nobody was all that tired. The talk just settled sooner than we were expecting. In the morning, Grisha asked, "So who took the billy off the fire?" The billy was standing on a rock, washed out in the stream, set upside down the way we always set it. We went round, the 4 of us, one after another. Every one of us remembered drinking his tea, and not one of us remembered the tea running out. Back then, we still put it down to the air. The air in the woods makes a man go dozy and sleep heavier. That's a well-known thing. From the tarn, down through the hollow. No, wait. First we went round the tarn along the left shore. There's a deadfall there. The deadfall I remember for certain because it took us an hour to climb through it, and only then the hollow. And this is the point where I start going wrong. Bear with me, I'll get it together in a minute. Normally, the road stands up in front of my eyes by itself, as though I were walking it again. But this one stands up in pieces, and the pieces don't meet along the edges. There was a camp in the hollow. Well, we had our lunch in the hollow and slept higher up, on the terrace, where the dry grass is. The terrace was definitely there. I remember a fire burning on the terrace, and I remember sitting with my back to the slope. But between the tarn and the terrace, I have nothing. Not dark. Empty. Like a page that was left out of a book, and the book is sewn up neatly and you can't see the break. All right, let it be. Tarn, deadfall, hollow, terrace. On the terrace, we turned in while it was still light over the trees. We sat down, we started, and the talk settled by itself, the way dust settles. In the morning, Mishka asked, of nobody in particular, who'd put the fire out the night before. The fire pit was doused, neatly, with water from the billy, round the edge, the way it's done by people who aren't in the woods for the first time. And not one of the four of us could say that it was him. From the terrace to the pass, from the pass down to the river, along the river as far as the bothy, from the bothy 2 days to the village. That part I remember well. That's the way home already, and the way home is always remembered better. But there was one more camp, the last one, and that's the one I can't tell you about, though it happened. We turned in while the sun was still standing over the teeth of the ridge. We weren't tired. We weren't wet. Nothing had happened. We just sat down by the fire, and somebody started a story. I even remember how it began, about a man who walked back along his own tracks the other way, and how it ended. I don't know. I never did know. In the morning, Senya crawled out, looked at our tent and asked, "So who put the tent up then?" The tent was standing, pegs driven in, guy lines pulled tight and even, sleeping bags rolled out, all of it the way we do it. The four of us stood and looked at it the way you look at something belonging to somebody else. Not one of us remembered getting it out, or putting it up, or climbing into it. It's held me ever since that morning. Not fear. I'm not afraid of the woods. I grew up in them. What holds me is that the story was left unfinished, and the night it was started in, I never saw through to the end. There's a piece of my life that went by without me, and the dawn came up in it with me taking no part in it at all. Sometimes I think that night is still going on. Not for us, on its own. Standing where it stood, open along one edge, waiting to see how it all turns out. For 15 years, I never told anybody about it. Not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. Worse, I was afraid they would believe me and ask how it ended. And then, about 5 years ago, I was standing at a bus station. Evening, fine rain, the bus was late, and there were 2 of us on the bench. I got talking to a chap. He was a good deal older than me, on his way to see his daughter. He'd walked the same places, only from the other side, and with a different lot and in different years. And in passing, tapping his ash off, he says, "We had a story up there about a man who walked back along his own tracks, and we never did finish telling it. Started it and never finished." I asked him, "And how did it end?" He thought about it, raised his eyebrows and said, "I don't remember. I remember the beginning, I don't remember the end." And somehow, we all went to bed very early that night, he says. And that was that. The bus came, he went off, and I never even asked his name. Things went quiet in me then, quieter than they had been in 15 years. You see, all that time I had been alone with that piece of night. Alone is heavy. But two of us, and it's only a story that two people didn't finish. Which means somebody else is carrying it, and somebody else after that, and nothing has come of it for any of them. Everybody's alive, everybody's got old, everybody's got daughters. And that's the whole route. Bridge, bank, ford, clearing, ride, spruce, scree, crag, tarn, deadfall, hollow, terrace, pass, river, bothy, village. I got it together in the end after all. You're nearly asleep now. I can hear it. That's good. That's how it should be. There probably is an ending to that story after all. It just wasn't the one that came to us. Let it lie where it lies. It isn't doing anybody any harm. And you and I will sleep quietly through till morning.